Good evening, everyone. Sorry we're a couple minutes late. Welcome to the LaRouche Organization Symposium. It is Friday, September 12th, the day after September 11th. This is the 24th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, and I think criminally and outrageously, we still have not gotten to the bottom of this. I attended a conference in DC about this actually on the 10th. It was a 3-day conference involving a number of people: Richard Gage, Kurt Weldon, Senator Ron Johnson, several scientists, the architects and engineers, the chemists. And what I think is very conclusive is certainly at least Building 7, but the others too. There's good reason to believe that it was not merely the impact of the planes that brought those buildings down, but something else: controlled demolition, explosives, etc. There's been a massive cover-up, but what wasn't addressed, and I understand now why Mr. LaRouche was so adamant when it occurred. One, he said Osama bin Laden couldn't have done this. Two, he said you have to look within the United States for who would enable such a thing, who would allow it, and to what end. And I think that has not been addressed nearly enough. And everybody who thinks about it can consider what happened to our nation after 9/11, the shift. We have been in perpetual war since that time. We have 22 soldier suicides a day as a result of the wars against countries like Iraq, which had nothing to do with it. Former Congressman Kurt Weldon, who's a former fire chief as well, said that he knows for a fact that Osama bin Laden wasn't even in Afghanistan, that he was moved to Iran. But we lost 2,500 American lives fighting in Afghanistan, and then more, of course, with the completely incompetent way that Biden removed our soldiers from Afghanistan. We should have left Afghanistan long ago. We should not have been promoting the drug trade, which is good for Wall Street, I guess, but no one else. And then what else we have? The massive surveillance, right? Everyone has to spy on everything you do because you could be a terrorist. The nudie searches at the airports, all of this, none of which has made us any safer. And in fact, we have more mass shootings now than ever. And we do have to get to the bottom of it. And we also have to reflect on what was it designed to do to us, and can we undo that? Can we get our actual freedom of speech back? Can we get ourselves out of all these endless wars? And very importantly, can the United States join what is now in process? And my guest tonight, Richard Black, will be speaking about a dynamic which, in a sense, is very much American, very much flows out of the successful American Revolution, and then a genius who was born, I guess, 150 years or so after the American Revolution, who, Lyndon LaRouche, who understood very profoundly the fight going back to Joan of Arc, to Socrates and Plato, for human beings to be treated as equals, and that the purpose of the government is to protect the right of the individual to develop their mind, to make a contribution to future generations, to become an immortal person because of the legacy that you leave for mankind. And by our lives, we can make those people who went before us immortal, because we build on the productive things that they did. We build on their contributions. That's what people want. So this new dynamic is rapidly emerging, but the forces of empire, the billionaire elites, you see it with these silly Western European countries who want to have perpetual war and keep Ukraine fighting Russia. And even if there's not one single soldier left alive in that country, the murderous genocide being carried out by Bibi Netanyahu with American backing against the population of Gaza and the West Bank. And these things are very ugly. On the other hand, you have a whole new world. And then, of course, we have the efforts by various elements, I'm sure, of the people who want to keep the war going and who want to crush this legacy of the American Declaration of Independence, to destroy us politically from within. So we've had a number of political assassinations. We had the targeting of Democratic Party officials who were shot and killed. And then we had just the day before September 11th, on September 10th, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who was speaking at a campus in Utah. Really devastating, just absolutely horrible. I think people should not try to make light of this or underestimate it. And it's very urgent that our nation not be divided into warring camps and finger pointing, but think of who is it that would like us all to be divided? Who is it that doesn't want our nation to become a nation of peace, a nation that cooperates with other nations? So I think I'm going to conclude there and bring up Richard Black, who is a friend of mine over many years, an associate of Lyndon LaRouche, even over more years than that, and who does a lot of the work of the LaRouche movement at the United Nations. So, Richard, please welcome and go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. So I want to talk about Lyndon LaRouche's Eurasian forecast. In the last day of August and the first days of September, as you may have heard about, there were several meetings in Shenzhen, China, right near Beijing, of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then an extraordinary parade September 3rd commemorating the defeat of fascism, the Japanese imperialism, 80 years ago, and then an extraordinary conference in the far east of Russia, which takes place every year in Vladivostok, the Eastern Economic Forum. And these several events, one connected to the other, have created a vast renaissance of Eurasian integration, which represents a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for the United States. And as we'll see, the key nations of Eurasia are beckoning us, we Americans, to join, and we have to mobilize, really, our fellow citizens to do just that. So as we talk about this tonight, and hopefully Diane will also have a lot to say about this because she's in the middle of the battle, of course, I want you to think about three things: infrastructure, productive credit, and education. These are at the heart of what has become really a completely new development just in the last several days. Let's go back 35 years to 1991. The Berlin Wall had just fallen, and the two Germanys were reunified. The Soviet Union had occupied Eastern Germany, and in negotiations with the US, the Soviet Union agreed to give up their part of Germany and allow Germany to be reunified as a single Western nation. Then within months after that, really, an economic collapse of the Soviet Union was no more. So these were tectonic, the whole changes. The whole face of the globe was transformed. And the boogeyman of the Soviet Union, which was supposedly America's sworn enemy at the time, vanished. And what you had was a new entity, the Russian Federation, and many of its the Soviets' constituent parts who became independent states. A completely new geopolitical map of the world. Lyndon and Helga LaRouche watched this and had an audacious idea that there was a new opportunity to change the direction of mankind. This was 1991. Lyndon LaRouche was still in jail out of a frame-up trial run by the Department of Justice. Helga Zepp LaRouche was the founder very active, of the Schiller Institutes in Europe and the United States. And in 1991, in the wake of these huge developments, the entire face of the globe transformed. They proposed that we reach back 2,000 years and launch a new Silk Road, connecting all of East Asia, Central Asia, and Western Europe in lines of trade, communication, exchanges of culture. Helga and Lyndon said this is an opportunity for global collaboration like hadn't been imagined in decades and decades and decades. And the idea was absolutely that this was to include Western Europe and include the United States, the integration of Eurasia. And of course, this was the nightmare of the damned British Empire, who had sworn for hundreds of years that Eurasia could never be unified, live in harmony, develop economically, threatening the oligarchical power of the City of London and their offshoots on Wall Street. So, Diane, can we take a look at the first slide? This is our EIR magazine that, as many of you know, we've been publishing for 50 years now. This is from 1992, and you see one of the original maps proposed by Lyndon and Helga LaRouche for the Eurasian land bridge. And this first proposal in 91, 92, called the New Silk Road by Helga and Lyndon. This was put together after dozens and dozens of conversations with American engineers, Chinese scientists, Russian experts. What would be the best routes? How do we accomplish this? And so the LaRouche movement launched this in 1992. This quickly was the basis of many, many conferences that we held all over the globe. By 1994, it's significantly advanced, and LaRouche is invited to Moscow, Russia.
And we should add, he had just gotten out of jail, just barely, which is so unusual. He was still on parole. So, yes, I think there were reasons for that.
Clearly there were sane forces in the United States that wanted this so-called convicted felon to take the reins of history. And yes, within weeks, he was in Moscow, invited by some of the very top senior, some of them elderly, economists, but very active, economists and physicists of formerly the Soviet Union and then Russia, to talk about what? LaRouche's area of expertise, creativity, and its impact on physical economy, the transformation of the globe. What were LaRouche's ideas? What did LaRouche know? We can take a look at the next slide. I love this one. This is LaRouche at the blackboard in Moscow at one of his many seminars with many, many leaders who were from the Russian Academy of Sciences, who were in the midst of watching their Russia being torn to bits by the shock therapy policies of the Mount Pelerin Society of London and Wall Street bankers, economists in Harvard. Russia was being decimated by this time in 94. The Russian population was shrinking each year by 1 million individuals throughout the 1990s. So LaRouche comes into the opportunity of a new concept, a new Silk Road, and a crisis in newly founded Russia. What are the ideas? What are the science? And this is extremely, I think, important because LaRouche had in the modern period, a unique appreciation of Russian science, spanning 250 years before his time. Going back to the mid-1700s, you had the great Mikhail Lomonosov, who was a discoverer in geology, astronomy, chemistry, electricity. He was an accomplished poet and wrote critical works on the development of the Russian language, which are used to this day, Mikhail Lomonosov. Interestingly, as Diane mentioned, the American Revolution going on at the time of Lomonosov was very much watched by the Lomonosov circles. And although we don't think that Lomonosov and Ben Franklin ever got together and strategized, the circles of Lomonosov studied Benjamin Franklin's scientific papers on electricity, and teams around Lomonosov carried out experiments on Ben Franklin's theory of electricity. If anything you want to mention on that, I know your husband Chris has done a lot in this time period.
Well, just that even prior to that, we had Catherine the Great introducing the League of Armed Neutrality as a way of preventing Europe from entering the war and helping the British. So I think that's very important. And really, the United States and Russia have been collaborating for a very, very long time. In the symposium last week with Tony Chaikin, we actually heard about various American industrialists who traveled to Russia, India, Mexico. That comes later, but there's no reason, absolutely no reason why we should be enemies with Russia or anyone, but start with
them. Yeah, during and after the American Revolution, this created a huge excitement among the intelligentsia of Russia. And in fact, Catherine the Great corresponded with President Washington. She was assembling an encyclopedia of world languages, and she contacted Washington to see whether he could put together a grammar of the Cherokee language. So yeah, there were all kinds of connections very early on when America was just being born with Russia. After the generations of Lomonosov, you have Mendeleev, and in the late 1800s, who discovered the harmonic laws of the elements. Vernadsky in the 20th century, nuclear science. LaRouche had a tremendous excitement about Russian science, and I think it was reciprocated by many, many scientists who were able to think bold thoughts, wanting to have LaRouche in Russia, and he made many, many trips throughout the 1990s. If we move up to 1998, the crisis in Russia is at a break point. The government bonds default, the ruble crashes, Yeltsin is still president, and coming in as prime minister is Yevgeny Primakov. We can take a look at the next slide. Now, he was prime minister for merely about 8 months. Before that, he served in many high positions in the Russian government. But what I want to say about Yevgeny Primakov is that he was not a politician. He was a scholar, an author of many, many books on the history of the Middle East. He spoke fluent Arabic. He was, for a period, the head of intelligence. He was a dominant Russian intellectual, and that's what Russia turned to in 1998, in the middle of the crisis, and a figure such as Primakov. And what did he do? Well, because he was moored in the physical sciences, the real economy, which had been LaRouche's specialty. What Primakov did was he revived industry, stopped the privatizations, and turned around the Russian economy from disaster after the bankruptcy of the sovereign debt bonds, turned it around in 8 months. It was during this brief 8 months that he made a trip to India. And on that trip to India, he made a forecast. Russia, of course, was on its knees economically. India and China were still horribly, horribly poor and underdeveloped. And Primakov said the future will be determined by the RIC, Russia, India, China. Now, I find that a awe-inspiring visionary discovery. In the midst of absolute crisis and collapse, a new idea is born, and this, as you can guess, was the basis of what became later the BRICS. 2009, 2010, Brazil is added to the RIC around what? Communication, trade, cultural exchange, win-win cooperation. Russia, India, China, joined by Brazil. What's the significance of Brazil? The size of Brazil is equal to that of the United States. It is a towering giant of the Americas. And South Africa joined in 2010. That's the S in BRICS, adding the African continent to this burgeoning movement for global development. And over several years, Lyndon and Helga, heading up the LaRouche movement, organized, I would say, dozens and dozens of publications, conferences about the method of economics, whereby you activate the powers of the human mind of each nation, of each culture, to solve the problems of poverty, the problems of conflict, and all based upon human progress, large-scale economic development. I was going to ask you to comment, Diane.
I wanted to say that during that time, I was responsible for organizing a number of meetings on the periphery of the UN for Lynn and Helga, and discovered that 60 nations out of now, I think it's 193 or so, or maybe the ILO, and there's some other things in there, but 60 nations actually had a person in their mission assigned to read the EIR magazine. And that means the governments were watching that. So I won't say anything if you're going to talk about Sergei Glaziev later, but it's definitely the case that Lynn's ideas have been studied by many of the people now involved in this new paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we published in 2014, I happen to have it here, this very thick report, The New Silk Road Becomes the World Land Bridge. I think I met with about 50 governments at the UN who purchased multiple copies, as you said, to study. They had the sense that a new opportunity was opening up. The end of colonialism could mean the economic freedom of their people from crushing poverty and disease. That was the period. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Diane, I think that period of 2009, 10, 11, 12, you were working personally closely with Lyndon. Am I right? Or do I have my
starting more in 2010, when I first was asked to run for Congress as part of his slate. It was the end of the year in 2010.
Right.
By Christmas. The elections had only happened in November, and he was already getting ready for the 2012 cycle, recruiting a slate of younger candidates in 2010. Yeah.
So let's take a look at the next slide, which is taken from Lyndon LaRouche when he returned to the U.S. from that first of many trips to Moscow. And I'll read it, and you can follow along. This is LaRouche. If we look ahead to the future of humanity and look beyond the sinking of the Titanic, that is the bankrupt transatlantic financial system, we have an obvious way of reorganizing the world. And that is to do what the British have always feared, do the geopolitical utmost. Let us foster rails from Brest in western France to Vladivostok in eastern Russia. Let us foster the development of the Silk Route Railroad in China. Let us foster collaboration among the two sections of Asia, India and China. Now, integrate the two in the logical way in which they should be integrated, which means that you are now in the area of the world's majority of its population. This is where the world's future population will be concentrated. If we're developing physical economy, these are the trade routes. Use this infrastructure building to spin off the other industries which are needed as a catalyst for the development of the industry. So we should commit ourselves to such a policy of cooperation among sovereign nation states and let the imperialists who drowned the world in war for a century, let them go hang. Let us proceed to do that which has been forbidden, but which is in the vital interests of our country, to foster this kind of development in Eurasia and South Asia, and to use cooperation with that as the way to rebuild the world economy. So now this takes us back to 1994. This is the period in which the new Silk Road is conceived in the mind of Lyndon and Helga LaRouche. And we could see moving into the period of the formation of BRICS, 2009, 2010, tremendous advances. And in this period, China is also organizing. It expands the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which was initially a small grouping, mostly to defend nations against terrorist groups, founded in Shanghai, China and the Central European nations. It expands in this period to 8 members, and it includes India with China, India with Pakistan. All these things are supposed to not be able to happen. A common interest, a shared interest of mankind in which China, India, Pakistan collaborate together. That's this SCO, which was so important in the last 2 weeks period. So something extraordinary is being built from a launch point in 1991. Now the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has 26 members, 42% of the world's population. And if you overlap the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the 20 nations now in the BRICS group, led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that's 6 billion people, 75% of the world's population. So let's look at the next map. And here I can plug our magazine, Executive Intelligence Review, which everybody watching this should subscribe to. The next series of maps we're going to look at are taken from this week's issue of EIR. And this is what we all should be studying. So when the program is over, go to EIR.news and subscribe. This comes out every week, 50 times a year, as long as in addition to our daily EIR news. So
you can also get it by joining the LaRouche organization, and I just stuck a link in the chat. If you
good.
give $10 a month or more, you will get the daily and weekly EIR.
Oh, terrific.
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so if you look at this, the bright red areas are the nations of BRICS, and the dark red or maroon type area are the nations of the SCO. And the striped areas, the striped red, dark and bright red, are the overlap of nations both in the BRICS nations and the SCO. And this, look at the globe. This is 75% of us. Who's us? Humanity. And I can tell you, I'll come back to this at the end of my thoughts. They are beckoning for Washington to join. They are begging us to join, and best we should. At this SCO meeting that just occurred at the end of August, beginning of September, Xi Jinping made a new proposal. He called it the Global Governance Initiative. Again, reaffirming the founding principles of the United Nations, but also, in addition, saying that no nation should be allowed to sow chaos. And every single nation is responsible to play a role in world development and world peace. Not just the big guys, not the power blocks, not NATO, not any opposition bloc to NATO, but each nation has a concrete responsibility to contribute to world development, not merely to their own nation's development, but to world development. What does that mean? That means that Malawi and Paraguay are as important in their contribution as the United States, Russia, and China. Think about that. Is that possible? Do you agree? That's the concept. That's the idea embedded in the notion of sovereignty as enshrined in the UN Charter, which was, by the way, those of you who have been reading EIR know, the UN Charter, the founding of the UN, was launched in the mind of FDR in his last year of the presidency before he passed away. And the purpose of the UN, the purpose of the Charter, was not ending conflict, was not conflict resolution, was not lines of communication. It was ending colonialism, ending a horrific evil, ending poverty, ending disease as a practical, achievable possibility with a new institution which would facilitate that, the UN. So this was all discussed just 2 weeks ago at this SCO meeting. But it was not just the Eurasian nations you might think of. NATO member Turkey was there. Slovakia and Serbia from Europe were there. And Prime Minister Modi of India was at this conference, which occurred in China. This was his first visit to China in 7 years. This is a transformation. The British have been doing everything possible to set India and China against each other. And as you may know, to recruit India to a military alliance with the US, Australia, Japan, the Quad, a ring around China, a military ring around China. And Trump, some have joked that Trump made a great contribution to the expansion of the BRICS by announcing these quite insane, unworkable, hostile and insulting tariffs. And India, as a sovereign state of 1.4 billion people, Modi said, no, you don't push us around. We're not your vassal. And so India played a major role, meeting with Xi Jinping, talking about Indian investment in Siberia, trilateral investment of China, Russia, and India in great projects, possibilities of Russian nuclear science, back to the role of Russian science, Russian nuclear science, building fission plants in India. All of this was opened up over the last couple of weeks. Again, launched around an idea, the new Silk Road. Diane?
I just want to add, because one element of this SCO summit, I'm not sure if it was there that Alma Deutscher, the young composer from Austria, or the UK and Austria, came and performed. She wrote a piece for Putin, actually, and then
Really?
he invited her. Yes,
Oh, I missed
to
that.
they're having a song contest right now in Russia, which I'm afraid is not exactly classical, but Putin gave a speech apparently today or yesterday, which I thought was really lovely, because this is not a cold, hard world of robots or something. And he's hosting right now the United Cultures Forum in St. Petersburg. And he said, quote, "Artificial intelligence analyzes huge amounts of data and predicts trends. However, I believe that original solutions capable of leading to discoveries and breakthroughs in science, art, and the social sphere can only be given by the inspiration and genius of a human being, the true master and creator."
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, isn't that great?
That's
And then more, this is more, I love this. He writes, "The world of the future is not a world of egoists completely immersed in cyberspace, and not of loners living by the principle of everyone for himself, but of people who still value love and friendship, cherish their loved ones, understand their inseparable connection with society and responsibility to it."
Well, that's absolutely beautiful. That's
Yeah.
astounding. I mean, I think of Putin as a hard-nosed strategist, tough as nails, unflinching, unemotional, but he clearly has a poetic mind when he chooses to access it. And we at EIR have often taken note of a speech that he gave last November, in which he calls for a global polyphony. He said, "No, I don't like multipolar. I don't like multipolarity." Now it's interesting because Lavrov and his top people are talking about, the unipolar world is no good. U.S. hegemony. We need a multipolar world. So Putin gives a speech and he says, "No, I don't like that." And he said, this is in November 24. "It is my deep conviction that the only new international system possible is one embracing polyphony, where many tones, many musical themes are sounded together to form harmony. If you like, we are moving towards a world system that is going to be polyphonic rather than polycentric, one in which all voices are heard, and most importantly, absolutely must be heard." Now that, to my mind, that's not that obvious. Why does he say, I mean, you can say all voices must be heard. Well, that sounds like democracy. And he said, no, they must be heard. I mean, to my mind, this goes back to this principle that every small nation in the global south has a responsibility. If they can't move history themselves, then combine with 6 others and launch an initiative. I mean, this was done by a group at the UN, a Uniting for Peace group. I think it was in 2022, after the Ukraine conflict opened up, and it was led by China, but it was a group of nations saying, well, here are ideas on how Ukraine and Russia could resolve this. And I think in Helga's LaRouche's view, in my view, there's not enough of that. There's still too much of a colonial mentality in much of the colonial world. Well,
that map was pretty shocking. I mean,
yeah,
really, you see sort of the barbaric so-called West. Yeah. All these vast expanses of land, Canada, the US, and they're very sparsely populated in general also.
Yeah, that's true, like Siberia.
Yeah.
So, now let's take a look at the next slide. Okay. This is at the SCO meeting, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, which occurred, as I said, end of August, beginning of September. This is a proposal by Putin. He said, no, let's not call this the Northern Route. If you see that orange line that begins at the very top on the right, in the Russian big port of Vladivostok. Then going up through the Arctic Ocean, you have a stop in Murmansk, and then it goes all the way down through that green line, which is the north-south corridor. This is a transport route all the way to Mumbai. So this is for heavy bulk shipping from Vladivostok through the Arctic Ocean over to Europe, and then from St. Petersburg, cutting south through Iran to Mumbai. Now, this is a vastly economical and least action pathway for trade. And Russia has the nuclear powered icebreakers to defend it. And this was Putin's proposal. Turns out that the route, which is that orange route through the Arctic, what used to be called the Northern Sea Route, is only 14,000 kilometers. If you go from Vladivostok south to around southern Asia and up through the Suez Canal, those same ships arriving in the same place, it's 23,000 kilometers. So it cuts by 1/3 the shipping time, shipping distance, shipping cost. And this is something brand new. And President Putin said this is open to all. And as you'll recall, as I've been saying, well, the meeting in Shenzhen, which is the big port of China, where the SCO meeting happened, and then the Beijing huge military parade on September 3rd. Well, prior to that, just across the Bering Strait, there was a meeting in Alaska, right? Putin flew over there to meet with Trump. And what did they talk about, among other things? American industry, American businesses investing in developing undeveloped Siberia. Joint work.
And you can see how close they are on this map, actually, right up there in the top.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's so close. It looks like it's connected. This is, again, this is not just of academic interest. This was a discussion point launched by Russia just a few days ago at the SCO meeting. Can we go to the next slide? So this is an updated picture of our Eurasian land bridge. Is it easy to go back to slide 1?
Like this.
Yeah, okay. That is the 1992 proposal by Helga and Lyndon LaRouche. What we're about to look at is the updated proposal in 2025. There it is. So what you see, the baby blue thick line around the top of Eurasia is that Arctic development corridor, the trade route. If you look at the turquoise lines in Western Canada and Western the United States near the Pacific, that is the famous North American Water and Power Alliance proposal from the JFK presidency of the United States, where the American engineering firms outlined a detailed, absolutely feasible plan to bring a small portion of water from Alaska and the Yukon south to irrigate the great Western American desert and the desert in Western Mexico. This was, it's all worked out. It's ready to go in detail. It was killed in the same decade that the British saw the murder of Jack Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. the devastated 1960s. But that plan, that baby blue, that turquoise Nawapa plan is still on the drawing boards. Go down to South America, the yellow line connecting the Atlantic coast of South America and the Pacific coast. Well, that's a signed agreement between engineering firms in Brazil and China for building the very first trans-continental railroad, like the Trans-Siberian Railroad built in the 1890s in Russia, like the American Transcontinental Railroad built in the 1860s. Here we are, 2025. This is going to be the first transcontinental, they call it in South America, the Bi-Oceanic Railroad. And this is all ready to begin if the British don't blow it up, which they're trying to do through political destabilizations of Lula in Brazil and other countries. So look also back to Eurasia. You see that yellow line moving diagonally, like from 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock, from the very top of the Arctic down south, all the way to China. That's called Power of Siberia 2. And that is a new gas pipeline that is going to be built. The Chinese and the Russians signed.
That's the one that Jesse Waters said we should blow up.
Oh, like, really? Okay.
Yeah, he said, Biden blew up Nord Stream. Why don't we blow up? I mean, these people are so outrageous. Yes.
Yes, they are. Well, if it's a battle with China and Russia on the one side and him on the other, I think I know who's going to win.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, go ahead.
That pipeline we document in EIR this week will carry 50 billion cubic meters of gas per year into China. And the agreement that was signed at the same SCO meeting I keep talking about was a 50-year agreement. Well, here's a question. If they signed a 50-year agreement, what's thinking like in Russia? What's thinking like in China? When's the last time the U.S. signed a development agreement for the next 50 years? I mean, we've made ourselves so small. I mean, it occurs to me, in Russia, Russia and China, who are the leading politicians? You have Xi Jinping, a philosophical mind, the foreign minister, Wang Yi, a genius in history. You have Lula, from a working class background, heading up Brazil. You have Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil, heading up the New Development Bank. These are thinkers, and this is what we have to create in the United States. And I think, Diane, it reminds me of your many candidacies when one of your effects was to appeal to people, think. We need a new American awakening of thinking for the next 25 years, 50 years. The top physicists working in the engineering field in China are saying that by 2035, within 10 years, they'll have a working thermonuclear fusion plant, a hybrid plant, fission fusion. 10 years. How quickly does 10 years go by? Boom. And the Chinese intend to do it. And when the Chinese say we're going to do something, their record is they do it. It's a different, I'm trying to give people a sense, it's a different universe. Not a different universe just of doing, it's a different universe of thinking. So can we go back to that last map? No, yeah, there you are. So you see that blue dot connecting Alaska and Siberia? That's the Bering Strait Tunnel. That's the rail link connecting the United States, South America, and all of Eurasia. And Lyndon LaRouche and Helga have been advocates working with American engineers, Russian engineers, scientists, economists, planners, now for decades, that this tunnel must be built. And now, again, it's being discussed. Putin's economics man, Kirill Dmitriev, has been saying, and he had a back and forth with one of our Schiller Institute members, I guess on X. Yeah, he said, yes, I agree. Projects like the Bering Strait Tunnel, this is being discussed. Well, we have to make it happen. I'll show you something. This is a, can we see this, Diane? Can we show me? This is a program from a 2007 conference in Russia, in which LaRouche was a featured speaker by video. And the title of the conference is Intercontinental Eurasia-America Transport Link via the Bering Strait. And here you'll see a picture of Lyndon, his speech in English and in Russian, because the conference was in Russia. And you see our map. Again, this is a Russian publication. This is the map that you are already very much familiar. So there's a movement, there's a global movement in the United States, in Eurasia, to finally build this tunnel. And I found, through courtesy of a friend, a video. This is 8 minutes. I hope that's okay, Diane, on the Bering Strait tunnel crossing. And it provides a lot in it. So fasten your seatbelt and pay attention. And I think you'll enjoy the ride. Can we see that?
Video here?
Say it again?
Oh, this is a video?
It's a video.
I don't think that works here.
Mm.
I can't do a video. I could have done it, but separately.
Okay,
if you send me a link to the video, I can do it, but not through the slideshow.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I don't know whether I can locate that immediately. Okay. So I guess for now we'll have to pass on that.
Yeah, I think I showed part of it in an earlier symposium. I can also look at it, but go ahead.
Okay.
I find it.
So anyway, this Bering Strait crossing plan, this conference that LaRouche spoke at, 2007, was organized by a Russian governmental institute called the Council for the Study of Productive Forces. These are the physicists, the economists, the engineers who study all of Russia and all of Eurasia in terms of their potential for energy, transport, education, development, raw materials, rare earths, petrochemicals. And this Council for the Study of Productive Forces in Russia, its forebear on the Soviet times, was founded by none other than Vladimir Vernadsky in 1915, who himself was a great visionary. And perhaps we can have a symposium one week on the great Vernadsky. So yes. What I'm saying is that there's a group of scientists in Russia who are carrying out this tradition still today. And of course, you see it reflected in these proposals from Putin. Then let's take a look at the next slide, which I think is a quote. Yeah, this is from President Putin a few days ago in Vladivostok. This was the, people may not be familiar with it. It's called the Eastern Economic Forum. It's about trade and development. It happens every year in the Russian Pacific port city of Vladivostok. And for those who are wondering how much is Russia isolated, as you read about in the mainstream media. At the conference a few days ago in Vladivostok, there were 8,000 people from 75 countries. What were they talking about? They're talking about what Diane and I are talking about now. 8,000 people. Now it was broken up into different sessions and panels and whatnot. But that was the whole idea. Development, development, development. Lynn, if he's watching, looking down, I'm sure would be very, 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 very pleased. So anyway, here's this quote from. This is what Putin said in one of his presentations, one of his several presentations and press conferences in Vladivostok a few days ago. We are discussing cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. You keep bringing me back to cooperation, say, with our friends and allies in the People's Republic of China. We have not yet talked about India. There are many plans there too. But the Asia-Pacific region also includes, say, the United States. And there are many interested parties there who want to resume or begin new work with us. We received excellent proposals for working with U.S. companies in Alaska. They have resources there, and we have technologies for extracting and liquefying gas that are much more effective than those that some of our American partners have. They know this, and at the level of economic players, companies are ready for cooperation. Let me emphasize that. Companies are ready for cooperation. He's talking about American companies. It does not depend on us, meaning Russia. We are also ready, but if any political decisions are made there, we will move in this direction, and we can work together in the Arctic too. By the way, we have already discussed possible work in a trilateral format on some of our Arctic fields with our Chinese friends. Presumably, I think he means US, China, Russia. In fact, all these options are being discussed. They're on the table. We only need a political decision. This is possible. Cooperation in both gas and oil would be mutually beneficial. So this is from Putin a few days ago. So just to conclude, and Diane, you'll add all the things I've missed, trying to compress a lot. I was in Minsk 2 years ago speaking at a conference on Eurasian development. I was a guest speaker, I was actually the only American there.
Wow.
And because I was the only American who had the guts to go over there and speak in Minsk, Belarus, I was flooded with media requests. So I became a little bit famous in Belarus. But there, Lavrov also spoke. The then foreign minister, Alainik, of Belarus spoke. And they all said, we want the U.S. to join. We're working on economic development. At the moment the U.S. wants to join, they're in. No entrance fee. You're in. So I saw this in Minsk again and again. And then last November, I was in Moscow, also speaking at a conference organized by the Russian BRICS committee, along with an excellent leader, Deputy Prime Minister Ryabkov. And again, all the BRICS participants there and Ryabkov stressed, even this was in the time of Biden and a hideous threat of the West threatening nuclear war, they kept saying, at the moment that the U.S. wants to give up their hostility, their hegemon role, they join. They're ready to join in. So that's really as Americans, switching now, speaking as Americans, that's our task. We have to bring America into what reason demands and join our friends.
Right. And if we acted like ourselves, it would be the most natural thing in the world. I keep thinking of how optimistic Friedrich Schiller was in his essay on universal history, where you could see he was so moved by the American Revolution, and he thought this would transform the world. It would spread to Europe. And of course, then the French Revolution was a terrible flop. But that was the hope that we brought to the world by asserting that since every human being was born equal, as Nicholas of Cusa discussed in the Concordantia Catholica, that therefore your government should be through the consent of the governed. It should be self-government, and that man alone of all creatures was worthy of this conception of self-government. Now, we hardly, George Washington said in his farewell address, that then requires a very high level of education and culture, because I'm afraid the population in the United States now they've become such a bunch of consumers instead of producers. They're all swayed by silly things. Whatever's popular, they vote for things that are stupid instead of thinking of what is actually required to build the nation. And you look at what's coming out of the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Ethiopia just brought fully operation now the Grand Renaissance Dam. This is absolutely huge. And they didn't have a war with Egypt to do it. They worked out an agreement for a very carefully measured approach to filling up the reservoir, which of course required holding back some of the water from the Nile. But they managed to do it in a cooperative fashion. It's going to raise the standard of living of everyone. This was the mission of the United States. David Lilienthal from the Tennessee Valley Authority thought every valley on the planet was going to be developed, was going to become a new Tennessee Valley Authority. And we've fallen short, but these nations are doing it. So if we were thinking like our founders, if we were thinking like Franklin Roosevelt, Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln, James Blaine of Maine, Garfield McKinley, we would embrace this. We would be right there doing it, working with these countries.
Yes.
What?
Shall we wrap up?
I guess we should. It's about time, but thank you very much. This was fun. What would you like to say in conclusion?
I just want to thank the people that did the work in the latest DIR, Stuart Battle, the managing editor, Dennis Small, one of the editors, and Oscar Burke, who did the graphics. They did a magnificent job, as they always do. So thank you for all that work, and hopefully people will subscribe and educate themselves more and more. Thank you, Diane.
Great. Well, thank you. And I have a few events I want to announce. One is Sunday, the Schiller Institute NYC Chorus, which I founded 11 years ago. That's amazing. Is doing its annual 9/11 memorial concert. And our music director, John Segerson, had lobbied intensely for the Cherubini Requiem for some time, and I just had no appreciation. This is a magnificent work, of which Beethoven said, "Why does anyone need to write a requiem after this?" It's just incredible. So that is this Sunday at 5 p.m., and you can get information on the Schiller Institute NYC Chorus website, which is sinycchorus.com. And then on Monday, there are two events. There's a rally at the United Nations. We're working on this Uniting for Peace to get action to stop the genocide. And we have some wonderful speakers, including Josephine Gilbo and also retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguiar, who naively and in good faith went over to try and help the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and discovered he was employed by the IDF as part of a unit that wasn't there to feed people, but ended up, observing the idea of shooting children and other people who were starving and lining up for food, and had the courage to come back and talk about it. So they'll be speaking Monday from noon to 4 p.m. as a rally at 47th and First Avenue. And then Monday evening is another event in the city. And there was an email sent out to people on the LaRouche organization email list, which will feature these same speakers. It's an indoor event. But I would really like to encourage people. The concert's going to be magnificent. The Monday rally, we need you. The world is changing. What Israel just did with these strikes in Qatar, trying to kill the Hamas team that was involved in negotiations to get a ceasefire, get the hostages released. Israel's policy seems to be to kill the negotiators. And this was condemned even in a mild way by the United States, but on the Security Council. This changes the world. I think we're getting to a break point. And the point is not only to end the killing, but to create a new world where people can look forward once again, for Americans, to the idea that our future is going to be brighter than the present. Our children's lives are going to be, in a sense, easier and more productive, but not easy in a flippant way, because they're going to have to use their minds. So that's what I can say. But thank you very much, Richard. And please, everyone, look at the links. Join the LaRouche organization, get the EIR magazine, and come to the concert Sunday. And it's being live streamed, so visit the website. Good night.
I look forward to it.